I'm so excited to be here with all of you for my Fertility Hormones 101 Masterclass. This is everything you need to know for optimizing all your fertility hormones. We're also going to go through the basics of your menstrual cycle. We will go through the key hormones, and then we will also go through some hormones that you probably don't know are impacting your fertility. So let's get into it. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you have your PDF. I also strongly recommend that you print it out and take notes on the PDF, or if you have a PDF writer, taking notes in the PDF while going through this course, I think can be really helpful. Also, don't forget that on the member site where you're watching this video, we have links out to lots of different supportive information as well. So for those of you that don't know, which I'm assuming you do know because you're here, I'm Amy of AIMEE'S, and I have been helping women get and stay pregnant for over 2 decades. I myself got naturally pregnant in my 40s. I've written multiple best-selling books. I have degrees in Chinese medicine, biology, chemistry, neuroscience, nutrition, functional medicine. I've worked hand in hand with many different reproductive endocrinologists, endometriosis specialists, nutritionists, functional medicine practitioners. I am your ultimate East meets West physician. And I really pride myself on understanding the research and the science and bringing that to you in a digestible way. I also pride myself on giving you real information that you can use to optimize your fertility. I don't believe there is any such thing as unexplained infertility. It is always explainable. I also don't believe, based on science and research, that all your eggs are going bad at a rapid pace. I also don't believe that you're running out of eggs. I do believe that it's all about quality, and that when you maximize your hormones, and we're going to go through that in this course, you can get and stay pregnant. Miracles happen all the time. You are worthy of yours. So my success stories, many of them can be found on my Story of Hope section of my website or on my YouTube channel. I actually have the honor of recording stories of hope with women I have helped to date, and it's not an exaggeration. I have helped thousands of babies come through. Again, I've been doing this work for over 2 decades. So you do the math. I was in clinical practice full time for over a decade, where I saw upwards of 60 to 80 clients a week. And mainly those were all fertility clients. So if you just do the quick math, and I have about a 70 to 80% success rate. And that's a hard gauge, the success rate, I want to just add, because who's doing IVF, who's not, who's this age, who's that age, right? So, but I would say most all of my patients bring home their healthy baby. It depends on how they go. You know, to date, the oldest woman, the oldest age we've worked with is 48 with her own eggs. We have multiple 48-year-olds. 2 did IVF, 1 got pregnant naturally, all have healthy children. I have multiple 47-year-olds, and I have dozens of women, 43, 44, 45, 46, that have all done it with their own eggs. So you can too. Some of the doctors I work with have helped women up to the age of 51 using their own eggs. And now we're layering in other treatments, right? Maybe there's ovarian PRP, maybe there's stem cells, lots of work on hormones, which we're going to get into, lots of work on egg quality, maximizing IVF outcomes. So those are the other master classes if you want to dig into those. You know, where I bring all of this content. Of course, my books are a great place for all of the content, and following me on social media, I'm always sharing new information. I'm always sharing success stories. I'm always digging into the most current research and bringing that to you. So here's what we're going to cover today. We have a lot that we're going to go through. And so all things estrogen, progesterone. I should also add at the top, all things menstrual cycle. That's where we're going to start. LH, AMH, FSH, plus the 4 forgotten fertility hormones. We will cover what these hormones are, how to optimize them, and get pregnant faster. And it went backwards instead of forwards. That's funny. Just wanted to show you more baby pictures, I guess. You do that way, just might be easier. Yes. So your optimal menstrual cycle, many call this your fifth vital sign. I fully agree. Your menstrual cycle tells us everything about your fertility health. From a Chinese medicine perspective, we really dig into the menstrual cycle all the way down to the color of the period, how many days you are flowing for, PMS, cramping, clotting, everything. Each phase reveals how well your hormones and reproductive system are functioning. So a regular menstrual cycle basics. I don't like to really nail down cycle days. This is a wide range of a regular cycle. I think it could go even more of a range than this. 28 to 36 days. I've had women ovulate on cycle day 8 or 9. So that gives them a 20 to 24 day cycle and have healthy children. I've had women ovulate on cycle day 36 and thus have a 48 to 50 day cycle and get pregnant and have healthy children. So you are not a robot, you are a human. Cycles can vary. There's just real key pieces to each cycle that we want to nail down. So ideally, this is what a cycle looks like. Bright red flow, tapers after 1 to 2 heavy days. The first 1 to 2 days are the heaviest, and then it should slowly taper off. In your PDF, we talk about the different, menstrual, pads versus tampons versus silicone cups versus period underwear. I prefer either period underwear or pads personally for my clients. Obviously, always organic, always non-toxic, super important here. You really want to think about what you're sticking into your vagina and the fragrance and the chemicals and things of that nature. And you also, with the pads, you really get to see what your cycle is doing and what your period is telling you. So again, so this is the typical flow, right? So we're seeing those first 1 to 2 days, about 6 to 8 teaspoons of blood. And then it's tapering off slowly 2 to 3 days after that with 2 to 4 teaspoons of blood, minimal clotting, mild cramps, or breast tenderness. I do not know why this is not so strange. Okay, I'm just going to use the old-fashioned way down here and click through. Okay, so the menstrual cycle starts with the follicular phase. The follicular phase is the first half of the menstrual cycle, beginning on the first day of bleeding, which is cycle day 1, and it ends with ovulation. During this time, the body prepares an egg for release while also building a healthy uterine lining. It is driven primarily by rising estrogen levels and FSH. So again, cycle day 1 is the first day of bleeding. It should last, your follicular phase can last for about 10 to 14 days. That's average. I think research shows us that only about 15% of women actually have a 28-day cycle. So the goal is not perfection on these cycle days. The goal is really, how much am I bleeding? What does the blood look like? How is my PMS? How is my menstrual symptoms? Remember, FSH stimulates ovarian follicles to grow and mature. We'll get into this more, but FSH and estrogen are inversely dependent upon each other. So estrogen here, FSH will go lower. Estrogen here, FSH will be where it's supposed to be. Estrogen too low, FSH is going to go high. So either really, they feed off of each other. So estrogen really determines FSH levels. Estrogen rises, thickens the uterine lining. Estrogen also helps cervical mucus become clearer, wetter, and more fertile. And then energy, mood, and libido often increase as estrogen climbs, ends with an LH surge, which triggers ovulation. Ovulation, again, these days are not set in stone, but will occur between 14 to 22 cycle day. You want to see clear, stretchy, nice and stretchy, raw egg white cervical mucus. It looks like raw egg whites, uncooked egg whites, not cooked egg whites. People that get that confused all the time. Clear, raw egg white, stretchy cervical mucus. You should see an increase in your sex drive. You may feel some ovarian twinging or breast tenderness. If you're doing BBTs, you want to see a 0.4 degree increase Fahrenheit after ovulation. And then you're going to have your luteal phase, which is the second half of the menstrual cycle. It should be free of major PMS, free of severe cramps, spotting, extreme mood swings. You can have mild back pains like breast tenderness or subtle cravings. Those are all normal. Progesterone is key in keeping the uterine lining stable for pregnancy. It's key for implantation. It's also a key indicator of egg health and follicular health, which we're going to get into. Before we get into all the nitty-gritty of the hormones, I want to explain why this all matters. So a healthy cycle equals balanced hormones and optimally functioning reproductive system. An off month does not mean your fertility is doomed. Look for overall trends, not perfection. So that's kind of what I'm saying about these cycle lengths. And like, I always see women all the time that are like, I want that 28-day cycle. It's like, you don't need a 28-day cycle. You could be fine on a 24-day cycle. You could be fine on a 36-day cycle. Okay. Look for these signs and symptoms. How much am I bleeding? What does my follicular phase look like? What does my ovulatory phase look like? What does my luteal phase look like? Those are the key indicators. We want a follicular phase. Ideally, that's about 10 days. We want a strong ovulation surge. Follicular phases can be up to 12, 14, 16 days. That's also fine. Strong LH surge. It's pretty quick and efficient. And then I want a luteal phase with progesterone up for 12 to 14 days. Those are my keys. Those are the things I'm looking for. Your cycle is only one part of your fertility. An intricate hormonal cascade is always at work preparing your body for pregnancy. Be gentle with yourself. Your body is miraculous and adaptable. If you are taking notes, I want you to write that down. I'm going to be gentle with myself. My body is miraculous. My body is adaptable. My body is smart. My body can heal. My body can transform. I have a lot of power here. I want you to remember that. You have a lot of power here. So again, before we get into the hormones, I really just want to point this out. Why ovulation predictor kits, that's OPK, ovulation predictor kit, can be tricky. Most OPKs only test for your LH search. I'm going to show you pictures on the coming slides, so you'll see what I mean. Problem, LH can fluctuate. False positives, missurges happen all the time. And then you have, maybe you're doing that at-home smiley kit, and you get a little quick LH surge before the real LH surge that happens a couple days later, which happens all the time when we're looking at hormones. You try only at that first smiley face, and guess what? You've missed your surge, which is coming in 3 days. You've only had sex. Sperm only lives for 5 days. Egg only lives for 24 hours. You've completely missed your timing. Do not rely on apps that are algorithm based, and do not rely on smiley face, or I think, or even strips to predict your ovulation. So, because you could really be missing your ovulation. You are not a robot. I always say the second you start seeing cervical mucus, have sex and keep having sex until you don't see cervical mucus anymore. So again, the problem with these smiley face OPKs, many common drugstore kits, lines or smiley faces are not reliable. They may miss your true LH surge, leaving you thinking you're ovulating when you're not. I, again, have been looking at menstrual cycles and charts for decades, and I will tell you, 30% of women that start coming to me who have been trying to conceive for upwards of 6 months or more are actually trying at the completely wrong time. So you really want to rely on testing kits at home that test both LH and progesterone. The LH is that's luteinizing hormone, that's going to signal ovulation. Progesterone is going to confirm that ovulation. Progesterone only rises after ovulation, making timing more accurate. Another thing I hear about all the time is someone will send me their day 3 labs and they'll say, I have no progesterone. Oh my goodness, what do? I have no progesterone. Guess what? You're not supposed to have progesterone until you ovulate. So progesterone should ideally be below a 3 the entire first half of the cycle. Once you ovulate, progesterone should rise. So remember that. The ones we care about the most in the follicular phase are estrogen, FSH, and LH. Once we ovulate, it's all progesterone. It's progesterone show. So this is, these are two different charts from patients of mine. One is using the Mira, one is using the Anido. These are two of my favorite at-home hormone testing kits. I also like the UVA. Just don't have a picture of them, but I really like that one as well. They do cost more, but the accuracy is worth it, and you learn a lot about your hormones. So these are using urine metabolites to test your hormones. Both of these also show FSH. I don't recommend buying the ones that test FSH. I mean, if you can avoid it, because I just think it screws with your mind a little bit because you see FSH. FSH jumps, or like, look at this chart. Her FSH is all over the map. Imagine if you constantly were getting a read that your FSH was above a 10, closer to a 20, you would start to really stress out. And then FSH does not do well under stress. It gets worse. So I don't recommend testing the FSH. With the Mira, it's an option to not buy the FSH ones. The Anido, I think it's automatic. The UVA does not test it. What I care most about is estrogen, which is this black line. Teal blue is the LH, and then purple is the progesterone. This is almost exactly what I want to see. I want to see estrogen rising as we head into ovulation. Usually each mature follicle, which contains an egg, has about 100 to 150 units of estrogen. Then we will see an LH surge like we see here, this teal blue, it bumps up. Estrogen can stay up like this, that's fine. And then I want to see progesterone rise. Ideally, I want to see progesterone rise 48 to 72 hours after the surge. So really more over here on 16 or 17. She doesn't rise until between 19 and 20, which is problematic. That tells me there might be an issue with the follicle, the egg health, and I'm going to work on the front half of her cycle to improve her progesterone. People that just focus on fixing progesterone in the luteal phase are missing the entire boat, because progesterone comes, right? So the follicle is what starts growing in the follicular phase. That's why it's called the follicular phase. The follicle is maturing. The follicle is maturing and ripening and growing, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Inside is an egg that is also maturing, ripening, and growing bigger and bigger and bigger. Once we get that LH surge, the follicle ruptures, out comes the egg, hopefully getting fertilized. The follicle that has now ruptured becomes what's called the corpus luteum, and that secretes the progesterone. So if there's an issue with progesterone, it is coming from an issue with the follicle. You can't fix progesterone by only focusing on the luteal phase. You have to focus on the whole cycle. I'm more showing you these because I want you to see, like in a case like this, fine, the OPK might have worked for her at home because she just had one surge. But in this case, do you see, so LH here is purple. She's got a blip here, here. She has another blip, 11, 12, 13, 14. She doesn't actually ovulate. She gets another blip at 17. Do we even know that she's ovulated yet? Because guess what? We did not see progesterone rise. Progesterone has not risen yet. So do you see how many false positives she would have gotten with a at-home OPK that was giving a smiley face or a test strip? She would have started to think she was ovulating on cycle day 6. Maybe she would have really thought she ovulated on cycle day 11. Guess what? She would have completely missed a larger surge. I think this was actually her surge, but we're not totally positive because her progesterone doesn't rise. So in cases like this, sometimes I wait for the period to come. We count back 12 to 14 days. We can figure out when ovulation happened, and we learn the pattern. So these at-home kits really teach you about all your hormones and your patterns. And I'm always looking for the trends, not the exact numbers. I want to show you what, healthy cycles look like on the next slide. Here. So this is actually from my book, Yes, You Can Get Pregnant. So FSH and LH kind of do two different things during the cycle, right? LH is going to stay super low. So here's our cycle day 1. This is a 14-day ovulation, 28-day cycle, which again, most of us are not. 15% of us are. Most of us are not. 85% of us do not have 28-day cycles. 85% of us do not ovulate on cycle day 14. LH should stay low until we ovulate, surge, and then come down. FSH has a little blip right around ovulation. Estrogen and progesterone, same thing. They should both be low at the beginning of the cycle. Estrogen starts to climb as LH surges, follicle is maturing. Progesterone stays low, 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 low. Then we ovulate, boom, progesterone goes up, okay? Progesterone remains low until after ovulation. Here is a mirror chart of someone who had a beautiful cycle, is what I would say. So you can see here, she tested on cycle day 11, 12, 13. So she doesn't ovulate until 19, which is perfectly fine and normal. And then you can see her progesterone goes up about 2 days later. In that window, 48 to 72 hours. So you can see here's her estrogen, the black line, climbing, 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 beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. See how our LH, the teal, stays low, 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 boom, ovulation happens, follicle ruptures, egg comes out, and then look, then here goes our progesterone, the purple, boom, 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 and then boom, look at that beautiful progesterone rise, and we stay up. We should stay up for 12 days, and then it drops for 1 to 2 days, and then we bleed, or we stay up and we are pregnant. Estrogen, this is pretty normal for what estrogen is doing here. I would argue with the estrogen rising like that at the same time the progesterone stays up, that implantation is maybe happening here. What's interesting here is you can see she did a BBT on this one. So you can also track your BBT on the mirror. BBT shows nothing. Boom, 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 nothing. No changes. So that's why BBT can be unreliable, in my opinion, as well, especially if you have dogs or cats and they sleep in the bed with you, or a really hot partner, temperature hot. They can be, subjectively and objectively hot too. Superficially too. But this is what you want to see, okay? So this is a beautiful chart. You guys can refer back to this in your slides to look at it later. So again, progesterone. What progesterone should do during your cycle? In the follicular phase, it should stay below 2 nanograms per milliliter. It rises 48 to 72 hours after ovulation and above a 5. Ideally climbs 15 to 20 during the luteal phase. So a lot of doctors will just test your ovulation, your progesterone on cycle day 21. That is completely inaccurate. You have to test it 6 to 7 days after you ovulate, not cycle day 21. And you also shouldn't just test it once. You should test it multiple times, so we know that it's up and it stays up. It can jump around. You'll see that. You'll see it jump around, but it should ideally go up above a 5, get to a 10, and stay above a 10 for 12 days. 10 to 12 days at least. The rise confirms ovulation and healthy luteal support. Do not rely on basic OPKs. Use kits that confirm ovulation with LH and progesterone, so you never miss your fertile window. Okay, so the hormones behind your fertile cycle. There really is a last letter to all of these slides. I don't know why these slides are kind of like timed, and I don't know if they're doing something funny, but I swear I know how to spell. So your brain, the hypothalamus is part of your brain. This is called the hypothalamus pituitary ovarian axis, HPO axis. You see this down here. This is actually a drawing I made for the first edition of Yes, You Can Get Pregnant. So your brain communicates, the hypothalamus is part of the brain. It releases a hormone called gonadotropin releasing hormone, tells the pituitary, which is also part of the brain, to then release FSH and LH, talk to the ovaries. The ovaries then secrete estrogen and progesterone. And they talk to the uterus. This is a very important cascade of things that are happening. So maturing follicles release estrogen. Estrogen thickens the lining, prepares the cervical mucus for sperm, also tells the pituitary gland to stop producing FSH, right? There's a feedback loop there. So if estrogen remains low, guess what? FSH continues to climb and gets higher and higher and higher, right? So sometimes we just have to work on estrogen to lower FSH. A lot of times we also have to work on the brain and the nervous system to lower FSH. I'm going to get into that. LH causes ovulation to occur. Ovulation is the rupturing of the follicle follicular sac that contains the egg. The follicular sac produces the progesterone because it becomes the corpus luteum. So progesterone maintains the lining, warms the body, prepares it for pregnancy. Pregnancy either happens and progesterone levels are maintained, or pregnancy doesn't happen this month and progesterone levels drop off, the uterus sheds its lining, and the entire cycle begins again. But you can see this axis is critical. So this is why the nervous system and all the lifestyle pieces, so important. I get into that a lot in the egg quality masterclass. You'll want to check that out. So the key takeaway, healthy cycles rely on balanced communication between brain, ovaries, and uterus. It's not just about one hormone. You have the power to support your hormones through diet, lifestyle, and mindset. Now let's get into all the critical fertility hormones you need optimized. Now we're going to talk about how to specifically optimize each hormone. But again, if you are really want to focus on egg quality, go and get that egg quality masterclass. I also think that's really important. Okay, estrogen 101, the main form is estradiol, E2. That's what's tested in your blood. It's tested on cycle day 2 or 3, along with FSH. FSH tested outside of cycle day 2 or 3 is completely bogus. Do not rely on it. And if you haven't had a menstrual cycle in some time, do not test your FSH because it's going to be really high and it's going to trigger you. Bleed, then test. Cycle day 2 or 3. And they should be in relation to each other. So optimal early cycle levels for estrogen, 50 to 70. It's even okay if it's at like a 30 on cycle day 2 or 3. I really love it around a 50. That's kind of the sweet spot. And that's when you're going to see the most accurate read of FSH. Key roles for estrogen: matures your follicles, makes cervical mucus, gets it ready, and prepares the uterine lining. Again, FSH and estrogen are inversely related. Low estrogen, high FSH. High estrogen, low FSH. This is why you shouldn't obsess over a single FSH number. It shifts with estrogen. It shifts with mindset. It shifts with lifestyle. It shifts with sleep. FSH does not determine your fertility future. Estrogen dominance, I think this is something really important to talk about. So what is estrogen dominance? So you have to always remember estrogen dominance means in relation to progesterone, it's high. So it can happen due to low progesterone. Is it just that progesterone's low, so estrogen appears high and it's not really high? It can also, and most commonly, it's due to environmental estrogens, plastics, pesticides, beauty products, poor estrogen clearance via the liver and the gut. That's where I really get into that in the egg quality masterclass, where we're working on the estrobolome, the gut microbiome, and the clearing and detox pathways, which are so important for regulating estrogen. Of course, we're going to talk about it here too. So estrogen dominance, how estrogen dominance impacts fertility. It can delay or disrupt ovulation. It can thin the cervical mucus, so it's harder for the sperm to reach the egg. It alters the uterine lining. It can impact implantation, and it increases the risks of luteal phase defects. Because it's so dominant, it actually compromises the health of the follicle. It's very inflammatory when it's super high. And so again, we'll see high estrogen maybe sometimes on day 2, 3 reads where I'm seeing that estrogen is like 100, 150. Anything really above a 70, I'm thinking, ooh, that's inflammatory. I'm thinking about endometriosis. I'm thinking about inflammation. I'm thinking about gut health imbalances and how to kind of clear out that estrogen, because when it's high, it's inflammatory. It's going to compromise quality and it's going to throw off the entire cycle. So as I said, estrogen dominance and egg quality. Excess estrogen equals oxidative stress in follicles. It impairs follicular maturation, and it can lead to lower quality eggs and reduced fertilization potential. So it's something you really want to know what your levels are doing. And then estrogen dominance and endometriosis. Estrogen dominance fuels the growth of endometrial tissue outside the uterus, increases inflammation and pelvic pain, creates a less receptive uterine environment for implantation. It's linked to higher miscarriage risk. Now, I will say I do not regularly recommend things like DIM or indole 3 carbinol, even calcium D-glucarate. It can be too clearing to estrogen. You really want to understand the entire picture. You want to know, is estrogen dominant in relation to low progesterone? Is there endometriosis? What's going on with the gut, right? You really want to look at all of the pieces before you just haphazardly take estrogen clearing substances. So you want to manage estrogen dominance naturally. You want to support the detox pathways. Cruciferous vegetables are your best friend here. And I talk about this in the egg quality masterclass, but really your goal needs to be 6 to 8 servings of vegetables a day. High fiber, 25 to 30 grams of fiber. The fiber cheat sheet is also in your PDF. You need 25 to 30 grams of fiber per day. It's amazing for so many things, but it's going to help clear the estrogen. Do not just take DIM, like I said. Liver Love Hydrate, avoid alcohol, add liver supportive foods, beets, leafy greens, lemon water. My liver support soup that is in the Egg Quality Diet book is phenomenal for this. First of all, it gives you all the fiber you need. It loves to detox the liver. Reduce xenoestrogens. You got to limit your plastics, your pesticides, your parabens. The AIMEE approved bath beauty product lists are all included with this course. So refer to that. Gut health, a balanced microbiome equals better estrogen clearance. So probiotics, fermented foods. Be careful with fermented foods if you have histamine or MCAS. I talk about that a lot in the Egg Quality Diet. But gut health, we use the GI map in our programs that with our coaching students, because it tells us so much about how we're clearing hormones. And then we come in with a complete GI map protocol that I've never seen. It's just amazing how quickly it balances cycles. I also, of course, as an herbalist, will use individualized Chinese herbs with our clients. We're, of course, using acupuncture. When we see people one-on-one, we're, of course, cleaning up lifestyle, diet. We're doing everything we can. And then we're reducing inflammation. We're teaching the body how to get rid of this extra estrogen that we don't need, that is compromising egg quality. Right now, it is in scientific literature that 50% of unexplained infertility is actually endometriosis, which is, we're going to have estrogen imbalances there. And a lot of women with have endometriosis, have estrogen dominant symptoms. The estrobolome, this is the collection of gut bacteria that regulates estrogen metabolism. These microbes, so they're in your gut, produce enzymes like beta-glucuronidase. So sometimes we will use this that determine whether estrogen is eliminated or recirculated. A healthy estrobolome equals smooth estrogen clearance and balanced hormones levels. So why the estrobolome matters for your fertility? Imbalances in it, dysbiosis in your gut, excess estrogen reabsorption to the body. And that's going to contribute to estrogen dominance, PMS, irregular cycles, endometriosis, poor egg quality, and implantation issues. So this really needs to be looked at. This might be one of the most important hormones in this whole series that we're talking. So again, fiber, cruciferous vegetables, fermented foods, limit antibiotics, chemical exposure, support gut healing, balance estrogen, optimize fertility. In Chinese medicine, we talk about gut health, the spleen and the stomach, the earth element as the most important piece in health and fertility. Estrogen deficiency. This is another really common thing we'll see, especially in diminished ovarian reserve patients, POI, women aging, over the age of 44. Usually I'm starting to see estrogen decline. And that's when FSH is going to start creeping up. And that's when we're going to start being in that perimenopause dance. Also want to add that perimenopause is a phase that can last upwards of 10 years. So please remember that. Once, say you even miss a period, doesn't mean you're done. You can still get pregnant and ovulate in perimenopause. and you work to maximize those hormones, right? So estrogen is secreted by developing follicles. If it's too low, not enough mature follicles producing estrogen. Too low goes to higher FSH, impaired follicular recruitment. So again, our ideal levels are 50 to 70 on cycle day 2 or 3. When estrogen is low, thin lining, so harder implantation, delayed or absent ovulation because we just don't have enough oomph to mature those follicles, poor cervical mucus. And sperm does not like not having cervical mucus. So estrogen and Chinese medicine. So estrogen doesn't exist in Chinese medicine. It's all about blood and yin in Chinese medicine. So why it matters in TCM stands for traditional Chinese medicine. Healthy blood and yin nourish the body, regulate the cycles, support fertility, and create the foundation for balanced hormones. So the best ways to nourish blood and yin. So again, this is really important. I think even in estrogen dominance, but really in that lower estrogen, that's where we're usually seeing like lighter periods, less cervical mucus, kind of like those little blips of ovulation, like a very small LH surge. Blood building foods. Again, but look at the vegetables. Leafy greens, beets, black, goji berries, dates, grass-fed meat, bone broth, yin nourishing foods, pear, watermelon, cucumber, seaweed, sesame. So Chinese herbs, again, I do not recommend just haphazardly taking herbs. You really should work with an herbalist for an individualized formula. Spelled wrong, sorry. Estrogen loves rest. It loves nourishment. It hates overwork. It hates high intensity workouts. It hates sweating when estrogen is low. Moisture and hydration, drink warm teas and broths. When blood and yin are strong, cycles are smoother, lining is nourished, and fertility thrives. So the keys to balancing estrogen, nourishment is the key. Don't over exercise or over stress. Sleep 7 to 9 hours every night, ideally getting to bed before 11 p.m. Avoid environmental estrogens, support the gut microbiome, get acupuncture. These are the top supplements, omega-3s, cod liver oil, one or the other. You don't need both. I prefer cod liver oil because it has vitamin A and D naturally occurring. All the supplements, you have access to them, through the PDF and also through my website. Sulforaphanes, those are the, sulforaphanes are present in the cruciferous vegetables. Vitamin D, you always have to check your vitamin D levels, guys. It cannot be below a 50. You want it between a 50 and a 70. Low vitamin D is linked to every fertility challenge you can imagine. B vitamins, magnesium is another critical supplement. Zinc, don't overlook the importance of the supplements, okay? Now we're going to head into progesterone. So this, like I said, is produced by the corpus luteum. That is the follicle that released your egg, right? So again, follicle starts growing in the follicular phase. It starts small, gets bigger, bigger, bigger. Inside that follicle is the egg, which is also getting bigger, bigger, bigger. Then estrogen gets to a height. It gets ripe enough. The egg LH surges. The follicle ruptures. Out comes the egg. This then becomes the corpus luteum, which secretes the progesterone. So again, progesterone comes from the follicle. Progesterone will rise after ovulation. It will stay high in the luteal phase. The main role: prepares and maintains the lining for implantation and pregnancy. Here are your optimal progesterone levels. We've gone through this, but here it is again. Low progesterone. This is the most common thing. We don't usually see high progesterone. High progesterone usually isn't a problem. If we see it, I talk about it on the next slide, but if we see it, if it's early in the follicular phase, A, you're not going to ovulate, and B, it's usually an adrenal issue or some sort of, bigger issue that needs to be addressed. So low progesterone is the most common thing we see. Short luteal phase, so less than 10 days, less than 12 days. Spotting mid-cycle or kind of spotting for a few days before your period starts. PMS, anxiety, difficulty maintaining a pregnancy. These are all the reasons for low progesterone. I'm sure there's more, but these are the main ones that I'm thinking of. So you want to make sure you're looking at all of these things. The fertility lab tests that you need are in your PDF. So make sure you're getting all those tests done. Chronic stress and high cortisol. I cannot tell you how much this impacts all of your hormones, but especially, you'll get crappy estrogen from that. So low estrogen. So you're not going to get a healthy follicle. You're not going to get a healthy egg. When it does rupture, if you do ovulate, then it's crappy progesterone because you are shocked. You got to do the nervous system work. So the nervous system hack sheet that you have, another critical thing to take into account. Under eating and over exercising, no bueno for fertility. Premature ovarian aging, diminished ovarian reserve, especially premature ovarian aging and DOR in women under 40. There's always an autoimmune component here too. So looking at the tests that I recommend, ruling out autoimmunity, really important. Okay, low progesterone, why it matters. So progesterone stabilizes the lining, it supports implantation and pregnancy, it calms the nervous system. So again, when progesterone is low, we will see high anxiety. Promotes restful sleep, emotional balance, it balances estrogen. So they work together. They cannot work separately. Without enough progesterone, the second half of your cycle struggles, and you will not be able to get and stay pregnant. So progesterone in Chinese medicine, progesterone's role of sustaining the luteal phase and pregnancy mirrors the yang energy in the body. It is rooted in spleen, qi, and yang, which transforms. So I was talking about the digestive system, transform food into blood to nourish. The kidney yang provides warmth to sustain implantation. So same thing, if you're doing BBT, you see your body temperature goes up in that luteal phase. So this correlates to that. You get warmer. So when balanced, the uterus is warm and nourished. We call the uterus the child's palace in Chinese medicine. Cycles are regular and implantation is supported. Mind and body feel calm and grounded. When deficient, you're going to see these signs and symptoms. And so you want to work on that. So these are I think really where the benefits of Chinese medicine come in, and practitioners like me, where we understand the Western and the Eastern side, me and my team, I should say. I have a team of practitioners now. Because you might not technically have, outward symptoms of low progesterone from a Western medicine perspective, meaning spotting or, maybe even low progesterone all cycle. You might actually rise 48 to 72 hours after, but then maybe it slowly comes down, right? But then you might have these other symptoms. Cold hands and feet, feeling cold after ovulation, recurrent early miscarriage, right? It's the first thing we're going to look at. We're going to look at thyroid and progesterone in these cases. And low progesterone often occurs alongside blood and yin deficiency. So in TCM, the progesterone equals the warm, sustaining yang that secures the luteal phase, built upon strong blood and yin. So we are all about nourishment in that first half of the cycle to then lead to this healthy, robust warmth and progesterone in the second half of the cycle. So again, high progesterone, not super common. It's typically linked to either ovarian cysts or adrenal dysfunction. Sometimes you can be on hormone therapy. So I shouldn't say a lot, but I have seen naturopaths, functional medicine practitioners prescribing progesterone for women all cycle long. This is a huge mistake and is going to lead to cysts and maybe anovulation, meaning no ovulation. So you are not going to get pregnant if you're taking progesterone all cycle long. Do not do that. I just had a case dealing with secondary infertility. She'd been working with a naturopath after her first child and to regulate her cycles. And she was then coming to see me because now she's not getting pregnant and she doesn't know why. And she's freaking out. Her cycles were all irregular. They were all over the place. We dig in. She's taking progesterone all cycle long. She's never going to get pregnant. So no, don't do that. Okay. I'm all for HRT when necessary, even in my girls trying to maximize their hormones. That's fine. But do not take progesterone all cycle long. So these are the possible symptoms of high progesterone. And why it matters, it will mask underlying hormone imbalances, interferes with ovulation and cycle regularity, signals the need to evaluate ovarian and adrenal health. Hypertestosterone is less common, but when present, often points to adrenal stress is usually the biggest thing, or ovarian cysts. How to balance progesterone. So focus on cooked, warming foods, maintain a healthy weight, avoid overexercise, balance estrogen, support gut and nervous system, and then your key supplements again. So again, remember, estrogen impacts progesterone. Key things to remember. Most progesterone comes from the corpus luteum. Follicle health matters. A little bit comes from the adrenals. Low progesterone isn't solved with creams alone. True balance requires nourishing your whole cycle. Progesterone equals body warmth, lining, stability, implantation, support. Heal the gut, heal the hormones, regulate the nervous system, regulate the hormones. You cannot overlook this piece. You cannot overlook this piece. All of your hormones are directly tied to your gut health. That's why diet is the cornerstone to maximizing fertility and lifestyle. So FSH. This is secreted by the pituitary gland early in the cycle, which is part of your brain. It tells the ovaries to recruit and mature follicles. It works hand in hand with estrogen, right? Optimal FSH levels tested on cycle day 2 or 3. Many fertility clinics and doctors like to see it less than 10, but FSH fluctuates month to month, and it will dramatically shift and improve with lifestyle shifts, dietary shifts, gut health improvement. And high FSH has not been linked whatsoever in the research. There is no research linking high FSH to poor egg quality. In fact, plenty of women with high FSH, that 148-year-old that I talked about earlier on that has a healthy child from IVF with her 48-year-old eggs, her FSH was close to a 30. One clinic would not retrieve, even though she had one follicle maturing. I think she had 2 follicles maturing. She was on like Clomid maybe. One clinic denied, we don't retrieve in women with an FSH higher than a 13. So she went to another clinic, smart girl, and they retrieved, they fertilized, healthy baby girl. Her FSH was in the 30s. So high FSH often means ovaries are asking harder for eggs. May indicate diminished reserve. Low FSH can reflect, it's usually high estrogen levels. And so it's a false suppression, but you've got to take care of these high estrogen levels because that will impact quality. FSH is one piece of the puzzle. And then another thing to remember is that nervous system hack that you have in your PDF. FSH comes from the brain. So balancing it always involves nervous system work and letting the body know it's safe. Safety is critical. And I'm not talking not living in a war zone. I'm talking emotional safety, nutritional safety, relationship safety. Like, am I getting everything I need on my day to day, or am I just constantly in fight or flight? First of all, that completely suppresses your estrogen because estrogen needs nourishment and safety as well. When estrogen feels nourished, or the body feels nourished and feels safe, estrogen is healthy and FSH is where it's supposed to be. When that is not happening, estrogen drops, FSH goes higher. So you have to remember that is the key. You can take wheatgrass if you want. It's not going to hurt anything, but like, it's not the answer. You got to work on the critical pieces. Lifestyle is so imperatively important. How to support healthy FSH levels, avoid environmental estrogens, eat nutrient-dense gut-supportive foods, sleep 7 to 9 hours, lower stress, reconnect with nature, acupuncture, nervous system regulation, supplements. But, you can't out-supplement a crappy diet or a crappy lifestyle. AMH, anti-Müllerian hormone. It's a marker of ovarian reserve. It's secreted by growing follicles in your ovaries. It tells us about egg quantity, not quality, okay? It tells us about egg quantity, not quality, but it also really just tells us about ovarian blood flow. When we see low AMH, especially in younger women, meaning women below the age of 40, I am automatically thinking autoimmune conditions or endometriosis, because I'm thinking the ovaries are not getting the blood flow that they need. So the maturing follicles are not secreting the AMH. Okay. So I don't even pay attention to these numbers, but I know you guys do. Antral follicle count tells me the most, and you can never really take AMH or FSH only. You really should look at AMH, FSH, and antral follicle count all together to make a determination about the ovaries. So important truths about AMH: it fluctuates month to month. It's not fixed. Low AMH does not equal poor egg quality, and many women with very low AMH conceive naturally. So a marker of ovarian reserve, but again, not an indicator of quality by any means. And again, no research out there at all indicates that low AMH equals poor egg quality. So that is the biggest point I want to drive home for you. In my 2 decades plus experience, I have seen countless women improve their AMH, conceive with low AMH, improve their egg quality regardless of their AMH. Don't let this number define you, and you cannot look at it out of context. You must look at it with FSH, antral follicle count in conjunction. And then again, like I said, when we see really low AMH in women who are under the age of 40, we're always thinking there's a root cause, and it's usually endometriosis or an autoimmune condition. And then I know you're all going to be wondering, well, then how do I rule out endometriosis? I have a masterclass on endometriosis, and you can dive into that. How to support AMH. So the number one way to support AMH is to improve ovarian blood flow and reduce inflammation. That is the number one way. So the anti-inflammatory diet, then things like acupuncture, castor oil packs, Mayan abdominal massage, pelvic floor physical therapy, laser, red light, HBOT, ozone sauna. That stuff is amazing for improving circulation to the ovaries and the uterus, and that will impact ovarian PRP. That will impact your AMH positively. But again, think less about the number and more about, I want quality eggs versus, do we really care how many eggs are left? Because even women in menopause still have 1,000 eggs left in their ovaries, right? So you're not running out of eggs. So nutrient-dense diet, gut support, supplements, acupuncture, stress regulation. There was 2 interesting research papers. I actually had them in the revised edition of Yes, You Can Get Pregnant. But micronutrient support with things like this up here, omega-3s, CoQ10, vitamin E. Now with vitamin E, and I have this on the supplements information in the PDF and on the website, a lot of the vitamin E supplements out there are absolute crap, and they're made with soybean oil and genetically modified soy. So you really have to be particular about where your E comes from. But micronutrient support increased AMH by 31% in 3 months. It's a small group of women, small study, however, fascinating results. And then ultra processed foods, another kind of on the smaller study, but significantly decreased AMH. And then when women stopped eating ultra processed foods, their AMH increased. So inflammation is the number one driver, not age, not poor egg quality. So key takeaway: AMH and FSH measure egg quantity, not quality. Neither AMH nor FSH predicts pregnancy outcomes. There was a massive study out of Fertility and Sterility in early 2024 showing just this. And remember, you have the power to improve your fertility at any age. Your numbers don't define you. Okay, the 4 overlooked fertility hormones. So these are the ones that many people do not pay attention to that majorly impact your overall fertility, health, and fertility outcomes. Leptin, insulin, cortisol, and thyroid. So leptin. This is a newer hormone that has been discovered. It's probably been it's increased its visibility and popularity over the last decade. When I wrote the first version of Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, it wasn't even being spoken about. So that's how new it is. And that book came out in 2014. So it's produced by fat cells, adipocytes. It's a messenger between metabolism, nutrition, and fertility. It's basically like, the fertility gatekeeper is what I said it is here, but it's basically like the reserves for whether or not I have enough to manage a pregnancy. Do I have enough resources so that I can go and grow a human? Enough energy to ovulate and sustain a pregnancy. So why it matters? It triggers gonadotropin releasing hormone, which we talked about in the beginning, right? Which comes from the brain, which starts the ovulatory cascade. So if leptin is too low or misfiring, maybe we'll say, this process is not happening. So this ovulatory cascade gets shut down. It supports follicular growth, estrogen, and progesterone. It's fertility gatekeeper. And when leptin is out of balance, if it's too low, the sweet spot for me, I want to see it at a 7 or an 8. I love that number. Under a 4 or even at a 4, I'm thinking we're compromised. Too low body fat, over exercising, under eating. Those are the 3 main culprits, but really also a lot of stress and a poor lifestyle, not sleeping enough. I also see really low leptin in night shift workers, right? The body is compromised. It can't get the cues it needs. So, and we also have compromised mitochondrial function when we have low leptin. When it's too high, it's also a problem. So above a 10, at a 10 or higher, really, leptin resistance, which also will disrupt ovulation, increases insulin resistance, PCOS risk, compromises mitochondrial function. So you really want that in the sweet spot. I have a leptin insulin handout for you in the PDF that you can use to really make your tweaks on how to. Most women I see and I'm dealing with have too low of a leptin, but there is definitely a situation with high leptin. Insulin as well. This hormone is tremendously important when it comes to fertility, and it is so under-tested. Hormone that regulates blood sugar and energy use. It is deeply tied to ovulation, egg quality, and implantation. When insulin is out of balance, we have high insulin or resistance, disrupts the brain ovarian signaling again, can cause anovulation, too many androgens, common in PCOS, poor egg quality, endometrial receptivity is compromised, higher miscarriage rate. Ideal fasting insulin is between a 2 and a 6. And see your PDF, like I said, that is in the handout on the tips for managing your insulin and your leptin. But I'll tell you right now, the overall lifestyle that I talk about in my books and all of my teachings, right? The sleeping 7 to 9 hours, getting in touch with nature, eating a nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory diet, getting in your 80 to 100 grams of protein a day, eating 3 meals, not fasting, not skipping meals, getting 6 to 8 servings of vegetables, eating good quality fats, working on your nervous system, going non-toxic with your bath and beauty products, leptin comes into range. Insulin comes into range. Cortisol comes into range. So cortisol, so this is the body's main stress hormone. Short bursts of cortisol, survival, fine. That's normal. Chronic stress is a fertility disruptor. When cortisol is high, It suppresses that same axis, that hypothalamus pituitary ovarian axis. So it impacts that gonadotropin releasing hormone again, and impacts FSH, impacts LH, and we're going to have an irregular or absent ovulation. It steals from progesterone. It's called the pregnenolone steal, which then causes a weak luteal phase and will compromise implantation rates, early miscarriage. It worsens estrogen dominance and insulin and leptin resistance. It damages egg mitochondria and DNA. So again, balancing cortisol, restorative sleep, and stable blood sugar. So again, going back to the basics, gentle movement, mind-body practices, nourishing meals, stress resilience equals fertile resilience. Again, going back to that nervous system hack sheet and the basics of your fertility. And the thyroid. This I don't ever overlook. None of these do we ever overlook in our practice here, but this is often overlooked even by some of the best doctors. You really have to be persistent about getting this tested and a complete thyroid panel. So again, all the lab tests and the ranges are on your fertility lab test sheet that's in your PDF. You can download it from the member site. Don't take no for an answer when it comes to these testing. And if a doctor is blowing you off, you have to find a different doctor. You might need more than one person on your team to help manage all of these things. And I know that that's a lot of work, but you also want to get to the finish line. The amount of women I have that come to me with a thyroid out of balance that have already been pushed to IVF and probably never needed it and aren't having success with it because their thyroid still has never been addressed is countless. So thyroid controls metabolism and fertility communication between the brain and the ovaries. It impacts ovulation, luteal phase, egg quality, the whole thing. It impacts everything. When the thyroid is out of balance, the whole system. It is the master hormone. So low thyroid, hypothyroidism, and ovulation, high prolactin, short luteal phase, miscarriage. High thyroid, hyperthyroidism, irregular light periods. I mean, these are generalizations. The autoimmunity Hashimoto's is so major. It's pervasive in the fertility challenged world. You need to know whether or not you have Hashimoto's, and then you need to know how to manage an autoimmune condition. Nutrients to support thyroid health, obviously super important. Again, going back to the blood sugar and endocrine disrupting and going back to supporting the adrenals and the stress response, going back to the basics is the most important piece here. But don't overlook these and don't underestimate them. So remember, you have more power here than you realize. You are not out of options. You are not out of hope. You deserve detailed testing. You deserve root cause answers. This masterclass is meant to arm you with the information of what the hormones should look like, what they do, how to get them back in range, and then especially what tests to ask for when you get them tested and when to test them at the right time. Thyroid doesn't matter when you test it. Insulin and leptin, you need to be fasting. Cortisol is usually tested multiple times throughout the day. And last but not least, more resources. So my books are a great resource. The revised edition of Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, I'm looking at it as a fertility Bible. It has so much information in there. It's a great resource for all of you. The Egg Quality Diet is an amazing resource. It lays out 100 days of the best anti-inflammatory diet for your fertility and your egg quality. The reviews and feedback from women who do that protocol are mind-blowing. Even to me, the person who wrote the book, the transformations that we witness are mind-blowing. My online coaching programs, we offer one-on-one coaching with my fertility coaches. We also offer a 6-month intensive deep dive, my functional fertility group coaching program, which is how you get to work with me. The other mini courses, there are some out, there will be more being made and coming to you. There'll be ones on autoimmunity and endometriosis and PCOS and sperm health, right? There's we're building an entire library of these mini courses. And then, of course, continue to follow me on social media. I offer a ton of free support. Instagram and TikTok seem to be my main avenues. YouTube, there's a whole extensive channel as well. So don't miss out on all of that. Okay. And thank you so much for taking the time here with me today. And I hope you enjoy this mini course, and I hope you enjoy the others. I look forward to continuing to support you, and I send you all the baby dust in the world. Thank you so much.